All right, 20 minutes away from 6 o'clock. Plenty more coming up for you as far as the big news of the day is concerned at 6 o'clock on News. Now, for the next 20 minutes or so, we're focusing on Women's Month. It's towards the end, but really what has been done. Think back over the past few days. We've spoken about Women's Day, we've spoken about the march, we've spoken about women's emancipation, but what is actually done? How much thought have you given it? I'm joined by Lebo Madiba-Lokotwayo, founder of PR Powerhouse, Mapula Fisher-Mozonza, CEO of Fisher Wellness Group. We've spoken to her a few times. And furthest from me, Mona Lisa Sam, founding director of Concept to Trade. Ladies, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. And I felt also so important as well that as a man, as a guy, I'm able to sit here and have these discussions. I mentioned to Mapula off-air why that is, and I'll unpack that again in just a moment. I think just to start things off, Lebo, maybe I'll start with you. You're closest to me. We'll work our way down.
Yeah.
Just the significance of the month, and Women's Day itself. We talk about it every year. End of August, we all move on, or seemingly that's what it seems like. Does it really make a difference, do you think?
I think it makes a huge difference. One, because it brings awareness, but over and above that, I felt that this year had a bit of consciousness behind it. I think we've moved beyond the point of just seeing it as another public holiday to really recognizing the efforts of the women that took part in the march in 1956. So, and I think it's also up to us to just make it what it's supposed to be, and not trivialize it. I think the challenge in previous years that I've noticed is that it's been very trivialized. But I think we've moved to a point where we recognize what it's about, and we're making efforts to know that those women marched so that we could be here. And that's why we're here.
Mapula, do you think the generation of 2016, the ladies of 2016, the young girls who perhaps are old enough to understand what the march was about, they know the history behind it, do you think they know what was spent to get that kind of recognition? I don't want to use the word right. I don't think that's the right word to use, the recognition that was so hard fought for. Do you think they get it?
Well, I don't know. I think the young generation today just find things happening, for them. And it's very easy to forget, what it took for people, women over the years, over the 60-year period, to get to where we are. Of course, we are not where we want to be, but just to get to where we are. So Women's Month becomes important because then it inspires young women. It reminds them how far we've come. I think personally, when I look around, I think young women take things for granted. They think they have a lot of time. They don't move to try and make sure that women's issues are brought to the fore, and that they are using the opportunities, because now everywhere there's opportunities for women.
Mona Lisa Sam, I see you nodding in the corner as well. Is there something you agree with, or do you think there could be more for the younger female generation to pick up on?
I think so. I think in the sense of, for me, it's about, the points that my colleagues have made is that it shouldn't be a once in a year, process. Otherwise, we remain women who are in transformation. We remain women who are on the cusp of achieving, on the cusp of leadership. It has to be, for me, an ongoing process, so that, as you rightly said earlier, that we don't end on the 31st of March, 1st of September, it's back to normal, and then again on 1st August next year we remember, oh, by the way, we've got to remember that. So we've got to start putting milestones, almost like a stake in the ground, whether we are women leaders, whether we are male leaders in organizations, public, private sector, and say, what do we want to have achieved by a year from now? What are the milestones? What are the success stories that we want to put forward? Because that then tells younger women that it's possible to achieve in areas of our country that are still currently male-dominated.
And part of that, I imagine, Lebo, is not just the business side of it, it's the economy side of it. Why are we still seeing, do you think, less than 4% of CEO positions in JSE-listed companies in a country where there's 51% women? Those numbers just don't make sense. How are we still here?
I think that for a number of reasons, we've seen empowerment as a numbers game than as real empowerment. So like you're saying, it's about statistics, but we need to get to a point where we move it beyond statistics and start acting on it. And regulations like the one that you're mentioning and the UN one of 50-50 by 2020 are a good one, because it pushes companies to get to a point where they realize that women have got the capabilities to lead.
This is what makes me wonder about how it all works. Mapula, how is it that so many years after this particular march, you're having to get the JSE in January 2017, in January next year, they are having to put into place a kind of gender diversity program at board level. It's almost being forced upon when it should actually be as given a right as any man on a CEO position. What do you make of the JSE making that big change in January?
It's in the implementation. You know, the laws, you can have as many laws as you want to have, but if the implementation is not being monitored, like Mona Lisa said, put targets in place, you know, measure those targets. I mean, if you look at the BEE laws now, they've also been changed to say they're now more specific, because we are a country a country in learning as well. You know, as we achieve, we realize maybe this law could have been done better to improve the implementation, you know. So now the BEE is saying we want more women, 30% women ownership. If not, then we don't recognize it, you know. Procurement, a certain percentage must go to women. So it's in the implementation of the laws, but recognizing that we are learning. So the laws will always change. It will not be perfect overnight.
Mona Lisa, we're still living in a patriarchal society, aren't we? And this is why I said it was so interesting that I, as a male, get to do this interview, because I would imagine that's where a lot of this falls over. Female empowerment, women empowerment, human rights is not a privilege given to women. It's as rightly deserved, yet we are very much in a patriarchal society. At your level of business, I'm sure you experienced it.
Absolutely. I mean, my whole career is around the fact that I was the only female, youngest female in whatever circumstance I found myself in. And I think part and parcel of, you know, all of these things we're talking about, numbers and so forth, what I think is a big factor of accelerating women is the number of genuine mentors that they have within their industry. So whether you have a male who's willing to mentor a woman is one thing, and secondly, whether you have a woman who's willing to mentor another woman is also another thing. So it's about, for me, certainly, if I didn't have the mentors that I had in my career, both male and female, I think my path would have been, you know, a little bit staggered than what it has. And I think women are still facing that issue to say, I can't find someone to mentor. And the mentors are saying, you aren't good enough women to mentee. So it's a catch-22 to say, where are the women, and can they put their hands up?
Well, can the woman put their hands up? Lebo, you want to weigh in on that?
I liked what she said about mentorship. I think we take mentorship for granted, or we don't understand it. Yeah. I think there's a gap between people understanding what mentorship is about. You've got women that are in leadership, but there's a younger generation that Mapula referred to earlier that needs to be brought up to leadership levels, and they need people that are already here on this level to start taking them through the ropes.
We're talking about bottom up at the moment. Three incredibly strong businesswomen such as yourselves, you've gone through the trials of trying to prop up, mentor, train, etc. But what about from top down? What about government down and the changing sort of political landscape that we're seeing? Does that seem to address the issues that you're all three facing, or are government and politicians just saying the right thing at the right time for the votes? Anyone want to weigh in on that? How much is government really doing?
Well, I think the most recent case for me was the appointment of the public protector. I think certainly for me, some of the key conversations were had about if they were to replace her, the current one, with a male, a male predecessor, then we actually moving back. And I felt that was quite important to be transparent about it from the stakeholders who were involved in who they put forward. Because we've got to start, if we said that we are appointing a male public protector, then we say women are not good enough for that position, and that probably takes us another 10 years to then achieve that, perception, or get rid of that perception again. So whether they're saying the right things is one thing, but I think in the most recent case, I think they really did their part to say we don't want to reverse back on what we've achieved already.
And I think that, government can only create the environment. You know, we must take up the environment that's been created to say, okay, how do I benefit from it? Like, for example, what I referred to regarding the BE legislation as well. For example, us as Fisher Wellness, you know, we are a hospital that's 100% owned by women. We are a hospital that 70% of our employees are women, you know, and nobody is pushing us, obviously, because the more businesses you have that are run by women, the more it doesn't matter whether a candidate is a woman or a man. You know, women, like for us, we just appoint.
Does the male ego get in the way here?
Should we answer?
Who's going to jump on this? Who's going to jump on the male ego here? Let's do this.
You know what? I think the male ego is there, right? And you can't avoid it, but you have to work around it. You know, you have to show the men the value. I think we think about it because we are in these shoes, you know what I mean? But I don't think male necessarily wake up and think, I need to empower women. But I think it's also about opportunities. There are lots of opportunities out there, and I think as women we need to capitalize more and more on reaching out to find those opportunities.
I want to change tack slightly, if I could. Let's talk about the world of social media. I'm sure you're all quite heavily involved in the world of social media. Marketing, branding is a bit of a giggle I can hear as well. So if I throw this to you, there is this ongoing social media debate, the stereotype of black business compared to white-owned enterprises. Let's jump into those two sandpits for just a moment. Black females, do you find it harder to play in a black-owned enterprise and move up, or is it harder to play in a white-owned enterprise? What is your views when it comes to the differences between the two and how they could work separately or together? You just spoke, Lebo. Let's go to you.
It's a little bit difficult because I've never been in that position. I've mostly worked for black-owned companies, you know. But when I look at my friends, colleagues, people that I know, I think they find it harder to climb up in a white company, because I think it's just stereotypes. You know, you have to work harder, unfortunately. And if you think that we are just rehashing the same argument all the time, just look at, you know, the statistics, like you were saying. You know, how much do black people prosper in a white environment? Look at the statistics.
Yeah, it's a mixture of, for me, having worked, you know, a mixture of both. You know, the one thing that I want us to always have, when we're talking whether we're talking black business, women-owned businesses, we've touched on it. There's this thing that we also have to take accountability on as women and as black women, is the skills gap that we don't have. And then secondly, once you're aware of that, not rely on someone to provide that skill for you. Understand your skills and then be able to work yourself to a position where you're saying, it doesn't matter if I'm working for a white or a black owned company, here's my skill set, here's my value. I shouldn't have to work 10 times harder than anyone in the same position. So I think it talks to that sense of letting go of some of the entitlement issues that social media, I think, in my view, sometimes has a irresponsibility of creating, that because we're black, because we're women, we are entitled. Being black, being a woman is not a business plan, it's not a career plan. You've got to add depth to that.
Yes, I agree.
So glad you raised as well. Lebo, did you want to weigh in that very quickly before final comments?
I wanted to add that I agree with Mona Lisa saying, because I've made a concerted effort that I don't sell myself as black-owned, female-owned public relations agency, because by just opening up with that line, I've already said, take me because I'm black and because I'm female. What I'm going out and saying is that I'm a public relations expert. My company has the capabilities to help your business do 1, 2, 3. And I think although we want the empowerment, we also just have to be think about the skill and sell ourselves more on skill than selling ourselves on being black and female.
I think it's a wonderful way of actually putting it as well. It's not that you're black or that you're female, that is what you're selling. It's what you can actually offer. I want to get final comments from you three ladies, if I could. Imagine, if you would, Mapula, that government is listening, the CEOs are listening right now. You've got 30 seconds. What are you telling them today that you hope will change by the time we get to the end of Women's Month?
Focus on the implementation of things that have to do with women's business. The legislation is there, it can be improved, but the laws are there. Focus on the implementation.
Mona Lisa?
I think to add to that completely, I think the time of saying it's a public holiday and let's all remember that there are women to be transformed and accelerated is over. We've got to put more leaders, make more leaders more accountable for the success stories and also almost a legacy that they would be leaving behind in terms of the woman that they have brought forward, whether they're male or female is irregardless. We've got to fill those gaps and we've got to be serious about filling them in whatever places of leadership we are in.
Lebo, you have the last word.
Yeah, my stance is that empowerment is not about numbers. It's about skill and recognizing capabilities. So if anyone takes anything away from that, it's that look at people for what they can do and to move everybody forward.
If I am lucky enough to sit down with you in a year's time from now, I hope many of what the things you've just spoken about actually do come true. We don't forget as we get to the end of August. Thank you to every single one of you for coming in this afternoon. Lebo Madiba Lokotwayo, founder of PR Powerhouse, Mapula Fisher Mazonza, CEO of Fisher Wellness Group, and furthest from me, Mona Lisa Sam, founding director of Concept to Trade, joining us. That's where I leave it for today. Oli Mgambi has all your headlines and Newsnight coming up at 6 o'clock. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.